Hi everyone. So we're here in San Jose, California. It's Saturday, July 18th, 2015. And I want to thank you guys all for coming. And I want to thank our guest, Michael Horn, for coming all the way from Arizona to give a very important presentation about the Billy Meier contacts. He's the American media representative for Billy Meier. Please represent. Welcome, Michael Horn.
Any further questions? Hi, everybody. What's his name? And here we are. So, tonight's presentation has, certain description. You've seen the posters, and we're talking about the Billy Meier case, the reason for the UFO cover-up, and the spiritual teaching as it connects to healing, etc. So, rather than just talk at you and start presenting from whatever my context would be, I want to always find out a little bit about what's important to the people that have come to the presentation. I can assume, perhaps, that based on the title, there's certain parts of the UFO case or spiritual teaching or healing, self-healing, that are concerning people. Would this be accurate? Yes?
Yeah, could you make it a bit louder?
Well, I'm going to get nervous. Everybody's nervous there. They must be a reason for it. No, okay. So, how many people don't know anything at all about the Billy Meier case? Raise your hand. It's okay. Okay, good. It's good to know that. Okay, so for the people that don't know about it, let me tell you a little bit about the Billy Meier case, and hopefully it'll bring you up to speed to some degree. Now, that being said, there are a number of websites. I have a website. There's websites linked from mine that have information, translations into different languages, as well as many into English of Meier's material, meaning a lot of the conversations that Billy Meier has allegedly had with extraterrestrials. So here's a little overview, and we're going to find out what more you might need to know before we develop the conversation further. So Billy Edward Albert Meier is a 78-year-old Swiss man who claims that for the past more than 73 years, he's been meeting with human beings from another star system, and that these people, fully human, basically indistinguishable from us, have been mentoring him, tutoring him since the age of 5 in a variety of sciences, meditation, spiritual teaching, prophecies, predictions, a vast array of information, in addition to, over time, making available to them opportunities to photograph, film, and video their craft, and craft from some of their associated people that work with him and work with them at times in terms of providing information and what have you. Billy Meier also, in terms of physical evidence, has on 4 occasions recorded the sounds of these craft on tape recorders in front of as many as 16 or 17 other eyewitnesses in an open field. The sounds being loud enough to be heard for over 4 kilometers from that location. Those sounds were analyzed in 4 different labs, including the Naval Undersea Lab in Connecticut. They were deemed to be irreproducible with any technology available in those labs. The Naval Undersea Lab has a recording of almost every sound source on the planet. They could identify planes that were flying by, but they couldn't identify the sound source that Meier was recording directly above his head that gave him a headache for a week. I happened to have been at a UFO event up in here in Northern Cal somewhere a few months ago, UFO Con or something, and a guy came over to the table where I had my stuff and he said, "Hi," I'd like to introduce myself. "I'm Nils Ratnerud." And I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah, of course I'm serious." He was one of the sound engineers who worked in a professional sound studio and this whole thing, and who analyzed Meier's sounds and said, this stuff, we couldn't duplicate this with synthesizers or anything like that. So The photographs, they've been independently authenticated, meaning it wasn't even the original investigators who were Wendell Stevens, Lieutenant Colonel from the U.S. Air Force, who had been tasked in 1947 by the Air Force with investigating unknown flying objects. It wasn't him or the two other primary investigators, Lee and Britt Elders, who have a private company called Intersection, which specializes in securing safe rooms, electronics, computers, doing counter-espionage work for Fortune 500 companies. They were the skeptics in the investigative team. It wasn't any of those people who did the actual analysis. They turned it over to experts in photography, film, metals that were turned over to them by Meier, given to Meier by the Plejaren extraterrestrials. Those were analyzed on camera, video analysis by a man named Marcel Vogel. Vogel was a research chemist at IBM, and he was somebody who didn't have any initials after his name. He was a genius who, pardon me, when he was about 10 or 12 years old, he synthesized the chemicals that create bioluminescence in fireflies. As a kid, when the rest of us are sitting around scratching our heads and playing with toys, he's going, how do the fireflies make the little thing glow on the cake? And he synthesized the chemicals to do that. Suffice it to say, as he grew and got older, he learned a lot of stuff and was very well respected. I think he's responsible for creating the coding on the floppy disks or something. He either owned or co-owned 32 patents. He was a respectable fellow. So he said when he analyzed the metals, and he did that on video, he said, with any technology available to me today as a scientist here, I cannot duplicate this. There are laser cuttings. I don't have access to this technology. Every element of your table is present in these metal samples discreetly. They're not all blended together. If somebody had taken stuff and tried to put it in the oven, said this was either made by a non-existing to us cold fusion process or in outer space. I can't tell you anything else. Okay, so a little bit, that's the physical evidence. Then I call that like the first level of evidence, first standard of proof. And fortunately, because of new photo analyses independently done in the last year, you can actually go online, like read a 74-page document that was just done authenticating the most radical of Meier's photos of this object that he was within 15 feet of sometimes, on the ground in front of him, clicking photos of it. You can go on, read the document, note what the protocols and technologies are that he used to do the analysis and duplicate the test yourself. Even simpler, you can take one of Meier's 1981 35mm photos of that craft that people said, oh, it's just a gold model against a black curtain. Well, he's not really a professor, but Raul Zaki in South America took that photo, dropped it into Photoshop, lowered the contrast, he raised the brightness, and this is a large object hovering over a gravel road with a grassy hillside and one of those cute little Swiss meter posts, white little posts on the ground. A child can do this with Photoshop. So this is because the technology has advanced so much and it's available to anybody. Meier didn't have this technology in 1981, let alone 75. He didn't make models and, full photo analysis and all that stuff. So, what we're talking about, that's the eye candy, the first level of evidence, if you will, proof, if you determine to prove something to you. The higher standard of proof is a voluminous amount. Right now we have over 200 examples of prophetically accurate, primarily scientific and world event related information. Meaning that in the conversations that Meier has transcribed, where he's speaking with these people who are called the Plejaren, as I mentioned, extraterrestrials, usually conversationally they're telling him certain things or they're answering his questions. Funny part about it, since we can prove when those documents were published, when a new discovery comes up and somebody notices, hey, wait a minute, that's not new at all. I can show it to you from 1976. Huh? I had this experience myself 2 years ago. I've had it many times in different circumstances, but since you haven't probably heard the story again, it goes like this. It's hot in here, isn't it? I know. This is a fan of mine over here. We let him sit up close. So what we have here is, I'm in Las Vegas 2 years ago. I have a little table with my videos and all this stuff there. And this guy comes over, kind of late middle-aged guy, comes over, he's crossing his arms, he's shaking his head side to side. And yes, can I help you, sir? Yeah, I'm into UFOs and all that. Very interesting, but this Meier case, gotta be a hoax. I said, really? What do you do? I'm a retired judge. I said, really? Your Honor, yes. And step into your courtroom. By all means. So I said, okay, Your Honor, how about this? If I tell you that NASA's claim that they are the first to discover that the surface of the planet Mercury is contracting because of the iron core of the planet, that in making that claim, they're incorrect, because I got a friend over there in Switzerland who already published that material long ago. Would I have to prove that to you, sir? Of course you have to prove it. All right, so I said, so if I take this book and I open it up here, do you see the copyright date, sir? Yes. So if I open pages in, and this woman, Semyaze, is talking to Billy Meier, and Billy Meier asks Semyaze, say, I've always been curious about why is the surface of the planet Mercury contracted? And she says, well, that's not hard, it's because of the metal core. 1976, so I said, right? In your courtroom, who wins? NASA? Or? So he said, you do. Because copyrights are the internationally respected standard of proof of prior or first publication. They don't guarantee that what's copyrighted is true and accurate. It just means this is our first verifiable date. We can establish that this has been in this document. It's done in accordance with songs, film scripts. I know a guy who claimed that he'd written this movie Shakespeare in Love, right? And he sued the producers and all that stuff. And he won because he had indeed written the basic story first, and it was copyrighted. And somehow they saw it and thought they were going to go around him to the tune of 6 or so figures. I'm sure they regret doing that. Thank goodness. So we have enough of this stuff freely available online. Documents, even on that particular case, I've scanned the pages in that book that are relevant to that Mercury thing, and just a bunch of others on the same page. You can look, you can find this stuff, and you can satisfy yourself as to whether or not did this man actually, hit this nail on the head before we raised our hammer, slammed down. It wasn't there yet. We say there's at this point, over 200 specific examples of that, which I call the higher standard of proof, for the second step in establishing the credibility of the case. The third part of it is the spiritual teaching. Now let me clarify, a non-religious, belief-free teaching. Something one chooses, read, study, evaluate, test, apply, decide for themselves how valid it is for them in their own life. There's no punishment if you don't do that, or if you don't agree with it, because there's no hell, there's no heaven, purgatory, etc. There's no demons, there's no saints, saviors, gods, what have you, over us, contrary to what we've been taught for millennia. That doesn't sit well with everybody, and I know that. And we're not trying to come in and say, okay, we're going to grab you and burst your belief system. We're simply telling you what we have here, and it's up to you if you're interested. You test it. If what we're saying is true, you're in for an unusually great and expanding process of inner freedom, sovereignty over yourself, without defying the creative source of all that lives, which in this case isn't called God or deity or anything, it's called the creation. This body of information in the spiritual teaching, which is pretty extensive, exists, and how to put it, we would be invited to come and peruse it based on the fact that there is a higher standard of proof, where whoever the source is, you may say they just can't be extraterrestrials, maybe this guy's a great psychic. Okay, however you want to put it, somebody established their accuracy impeccably. There's no guessing. There haven't been any misses, unfortunately for us. We'll get into that. And so if this is indeed a credible foundation of information, what's the reason for this extraterrestrial? The reason is to help us assure our own future survival so that we can develop and evolve as true, real, loving human beings, caring for and about each other and all of the elements of life on this planet, nurturing in a way where we are no longer looking over our shoulders in fear of each other, not climbing over each other to possess other people's pieces of green paper or silver coins, or to take their homes and possessions or whatever, but that we get into a place where we can live in, Meier usually says, peace, love, freedom, and harmony. Considering there may be as many as 8.5 billion people on Earth, if we think of everybody as another note, although we don't know any scale that expands to 8.5 billion notes, think of each of us as a note in the song of life. Harmony means that we can come into each other's presence and resonate in a way where we are producing harmony rather than dissonance with each other. And that harmony is a very beautiful thing. The reason we generally like certain things, take religious music for an example. Some of the most beautiful music ever written, truly is. You know, religious, you can or not resonate with the words and the content of it. But the music, there's a lot of harmony in religious music. And let's say in Western religious music. I'm not that familiar with the religious music of other traditions, but come Christmas time, we've all heard these songs. We can hum them and all. There's something lovely about harmony. So the spiritual teaching isn't a you should do this type of thing, and if you don't, you're going to be dipped in hot lead for eternity. It's basically a handbook, if you will, of how life works, how things actually work. That a handbook that's accessible to a physicist or to somebody that sells flowers. It doesn't matter what you do. Life works a certain way. And what we want to go into a little bit tonight is, without going in chapter and verse, just cover a few of the basics and see what your interest, what your questions, what your challenges would be about this material, so that other people who will probably also have the same questions and challenges and what have you, can hear at least an answer, which may be in some cases I don't know, or here's my version of it, or according to the information in the case thus and so. So one of the primary laws of this universe is the law of cause and effect. Are we familiar with that? You've heard, as you sow, so shall you reap. What goes around comes around. So however we look at the different descriptives for the law of cause and effect, whether they are just from a religious tradition or from a tradition of physics, energy follows thought, so that which goes out, also every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Cause and effect is a little more than that too, because as Meier has explained, every cause can often have multiple effects. Well, how is that relevant to what we're talking about? How could this be relevant to healing and this and that and the rest of it? When we look at some of the core principles, I'll probably forget a few of them, but some of the core precepts or principles in the Meier case, in the spiritual teaching, the first thing that pops to mind is that we are 100% responsible for our lives and everything in it. It doesn't mean that other things don't come from other places. It just means we have to reframe. We certainly have the opportunity, if we want to look at that idea, of reframing this idea that we are in any sense pawns of outside forces. Those forces, whether we think of them as an evil force, as a benevolent force, as a leader of any form or other, we are solely responsible for ourselves. That which we hear, read, receive from other sources, from outside authorities, it's our responsibility to decide what we do with that, how we receive it, and utilize it if we do. If we're 100% responsible for everything, it behooves us to see things as they are. In our world, we know that we're told a lot of things in every sense, in every aspect of media, online, movies, TV, news. We're told things as if they were real and true. We happen to be in a period of time in which Meier previously had said that people will be succumbing to phantasmagoria. They will be tricked. Their eyes, what they see, will fool and deceive them. They won't be able to distinguish that which is real from that which is not. I'm not saying this applies to you. It does apply to a lot of people in the world who really do get confused between that which is made of various images and presented and sold and that which is real and true. How do we discern? How do we determine what's real and what isn't? Well, we're taking full responsibility for that. We're choosing to make that distinction. So therefore, we have to be in a place internally of neutrality, where we are not coming in with the prejudice as to what is or isn't so, but we're going to very often do so anyhow, aren't we? We have X number of years of life experience. We take certain things for granted. We accept certain things at face value. Well, of course, it's part of it all. But just as a crazy, for instance, we could see that there's a white extension outside of a beam going down here, kind of a thing, support. Well, we could look at that and assume that it's hollow, or we could assume that it's solid, or we could assume it's made of steel. But what we could safely assume is that, it's there. If we want to know more about its nature and what the reality of it is, then we go about examining it. If we're going to assume that we already know what it is, we're not going to be as likely to discover that what we find could contradict our point of view, our prejudice. All of us, everybody, carries certain beliefs, even if we say, I absolutely am fact-based and I don't believe it. It's like with people who are really strong religious believers, and some of the people, I'm involved with a group up in Flagstaff where I live. I go to their events and everything. There are people from a group called the Baha'i faith. And that's a faith that's come out of Iran and kind of an offshoot of Islam. And in Iran, these people are persecuted, tortured, and killed. And basically, as I said to somebody who was there, I said, I have absolutely no respect for your beliefs. I hope you feel the same way about mine, but I really love that you live good values. That's where we overlap. You are family-oriented, you're community-oriented, you do no harm, you care about your environment, the people in your... I said, I resonate to that, that's why I'm here. Your beliefs, the things, the constructs you've got about a God this or a prophet that or anything else, I don't share those. I don't care, because you're not inflicting it on me. You're sharing your being. Your being resonates great with me, and I hope mine does with you too, because I appreciate you. So I don't have to confront and argue people's beliefs. I can tell everybody, including my friends up there in Flagstaff, every religion rests on one premise, that it's inadmissible. You can't bring it into a courtroom. You can't bring it into kindergarten. Here it is. What's in this book is true because this book says it's true. That's it. Now, people say, yeah, but I have a personal relationship with this one. I'm sorry, you didn't know about that until you got it from some source. Now, if you're comfortable with that, that's fine with me, because you're not inflicting it on me, and I'm not going to inflict on you. I'm like, oh, you're wrong. But if you want to be honest about it, you cannot show me that your belief system has any more validity to it. It doesn't have any more authority to it, not than that a book says it's so. And the second part of it is, you're the authority. Well, what do you mean? There's 100 religions in the world, and each person that's chosen one has decided that that's the true religion. That's okay, but that then makes you the God. Oh, it's that religion. I'm sorry, how else? You're going to tell me that the other person's wrong to have that belief, and they're going to tell you that you're wrong to have the belief. So you're each the authorities that have validated this particular belief system. That's all. And that's fine. I'm not here to burn your place to hell. I just want you to know that we're going to be truthful about what is, and if it makes you uncomfortable, you have a great focal point for meditation, if you choose to do it. If you want to see what is from a place of neutrality, and you know you're going to be uncomfortable, you're not being told you have to give up whatever it is you believe. Do you want to know what it is? Do you want to know why you have that belief? And it doesn't even have to be religious, about anything in life. You have to see something as it is. Now, if you see something, let's just take something that comes up inside of you as an issue or a problem. And this is where this stuff is really useful. If you can bring yourself to have it a focal point on the issue, look at it with neutrality, so that you can deeply understand it, just for yourself. Nobody's going to tell you whether you're right or wrong or how to do it. I've done little workshops where everybody in the room was doing this simultaneously on their own issues. I said, don't tell me your issues, I can't solve it for you, but you can make your own progress. So if you're doing that and you're paying attention to that, you're going to find at times that resistance, denial, defense, negotiations, judgments pop up. Oh, ideally, we're all past that, but we're not in reality, so then you can look at that. So if I'm looking at something, somebody says to me, you know something, I really don't like what you did, I go, well, if I'm going to apply that to myself, and if I'm invested in being right, which I've been accused of, you always have to be right. Oh gosh, it's because I'm always right. If I'm invested in being right, but I'm going to be honest enough to take a look at that, I'm probably going to run up against some inner grumbling where I'm going to have to, I'm trying to make myself right rather than look at what the thing is, where my fallibility as a human being may be. So instead of fighting with my denial, I'm going to look at the denial. Okay, what does that mean? It means this. If something comes up that we're willing to look at inside, but suddenly it presents, or we present ourselves with something we don't like about ourselves, we want to deny, judge, negotiate, or resist it, there's a reason for that. It's not complicated. Usually, we're invested in being right, not making a parent wrong who inculcated a belief in us. We are complex beings, but we're not so complex that we are not equipped to start to unravel these things and even get to the place where a core belief that has run us for a long time can present itself to us face to face. And we can gently pull back that curtain like in The Wizard of Oz, and we see this little guy at the microphone going, boo. And we go, oh, give me that again. Boo. Is that it? This is what's been running me since I'm 4 years old? Boo? Yes. Because when you were 4 years old, it didn't need to be any more than boo, and we froze. We wrapped defense around our psyches, against ourselves and around ourselves, to protect from a feeling of being unlovable, unloved, wrong, shameful, rejected by our primary caregivers. Most of the people in this room, let's just hope and assume, for the sake of goodness, that we all had some nurturing growing up. Somebody loved us, a parent, two parents, and uncles. We got something in there. At an early age in almost everybody's life, something happens that disconnects us from that feeling of being unconditionally loved. It is, under the best of circumstances, it's something that's done to protect us. Don't touch that. It's hot. Yay. So don't walk into traffic. It's like we get shocked by a well-intentioned person who isn't just going to go, please, sweetheart, not put your hand on that burning stove. You know, get your, because they care, right? But we've been kind of, you know, under these nice, idyllic, rapidly disappearing circumstances of nurturing and rocking the babies here, we suddenly get yanked out of that kind of sense of unconditional love and being okay. And we interpret it in our non-intellectual abilities. We don't go, let's see, I'm 30 years old, and what Mom really meant there was, Junior, for your own, we don't go through that. We go, what did I do wrong? And that's what we wrap around ourselves. And so when we become neurotic in life, when we become dysfunctional in life, to varying degrees, what happens is that, or those inflictions upon our sensitivity, well-meaning as they were, we start filtering the outside. Things that happen that aren't related to us directly, we become a little hyper-vigilant, usually unconsciously. So we're contracting in the face of all sorts of stimuli, and we're reacting inappropriately. We freeze up, we start to smile, we start manifesting adaptive behaviors to things that have nothing to do with us really as beings, because we have created this fuse or this resonance of trying to now protect ourselves against being culpable or wrong or vulnerable. So far, any question on that? You don't have to agree, but is it clear what I'm trying to get at here? Okay, so later on in life, internal and external circumstances can trigger our unconscious reactions. People have all sorts of adaptive behaviors when their little neuroses are coming up, and we see it all the time. We see people with strange mannerisms, tics, and you know, on an extreme basis, we see people who will involuntarily shrink back, and it's not to make fun of anybody. We're all basically, we're still responding in some way, like that 2, 3, 4-year-old kid, and most of the time we have no idea that what's making us uncomfortable has its basis in this previous, you know, stimulus response thing that we bought into. So when we look also at the Meier material and the spiritual teaching, where we learn that, okay, now we're willing to see things as they are. So what Meier says, will you observe and control every thought? Now, just a minute, I can't talk to you because I've got thoughts I'm trying to control. Now, no matter what we're doing, ideally, we want to be aware of what's going on internally, because it's very helpful in an ongoing process of disconnecting these buttons we've installed in ourselves after a while. Somebody says, there's a button here, I'm putting a button, and then we go, I'm going to put some more in there, and you know, so everything I'm reacting to. For instance, in my own case, my mother, wonderful woman, tough little Russian woman, right? And raising my sister and I, she was hyper concerned, you could use the word even overbearing at times, but not abusively, just invasively. So I became hyper-vigilant and hypersensitive to her, to the degree that when I was with her, even as an adult, she could say certain things just in the course of whatever she's doing, and I'm sitting there, you know, it's twitching me out. Going, oh. So back in the 90s, I had created my little process called Standing in Spirit for working with this type of stuff. And around 94, 95, I made the decision I was going to go visit my mother from LA. I was going to go to Chicago and visit her, and I was going to focus on disconnecting my buttons. I wasn't going to try and change her. It's not her fault that she's who she is and that it drives me nuts. It's me, right? Come on, you know. So I go there, and I'm going to get this stuff worked out, because I want to love her. You know, she's not going to be here forever, and she's a great woman, but why? She drives me nuts. So I remember sitting around, and she'll say something, and I would start to notice and just feel this stuff. Man, it was clobbering me right in the solar plexus. And she just, boom. Little thing, she's like 5 feet tall, you know, and she just drops one here and drops one there. And so I'm going, whoa, my gosh. So I spent time a lot during that visit decommissioning, desensitizing, dissipating the charge by bringing myself into focused conscious awareness. Well, what did she say? She said that, well, why do I get mad? So after a few days, I was able to say to her, you know, Mom, and this was a whole different thing. I said, you know, I really love you. Sometimes you really drive me crazy, but I love you, and I want to have a great rapport with you, and it's just, I wasn't angry at her anymore. And she didn't know that I'd ever been angry at her, because of course, I inherited being right about everything from her. So she was right about everything, and I just had to go, okay, let it be. So we're seeing now, we see things as they are, then something comes in, we're in a place of neutrality, we're looking to notice, observe, and to control the thought, because every thought leads to a feeling. It isn't the other way around. We don't feel something and then think about it. Not exactly. We think first, usually below our conscious level. We have a feeling, a micro thought follows it, leads us, impels us to action. We act out of feelings because first there was a thought, then we felt something, then we thought about it, and we went and did it. Oh, wouldn't there be another possibility besides what you just did by putting your hand through the door? Oh, I didn't think about it. Yeah. So Billy's in this teaching, it's not about Billy, it's about a teaching, and the teaching is that as we work with this process, whatever we're doing, my mouth is going and talking, you may be sitting and listening, we're still all thinking right now. Wait, thoughts are appearing and passing. Some are, just doesn't matter. But there are some that may be triggered in me and you and anybody. And we want to notice, especially if those are thoughts that have some habitual history with us, that trigger something to us, that we start to get edgy about somebody or something all the time. You know how it is. We're human beings. So we have this theater of possibility inside of us. That means that we have an ongoing opportunity to receive what our content is, to perceive it. And if we make a simple agreement with ourselves, with our innermost self, our innermost highest inner teacher, we will not get anything we can't handle. So at any moment, if we are thinking about something, if we're troubled about something, whether it's a health issue, a monetary, anything else, a relationship with somebody, we remember that we are inviting this content to come to us for our healing, our self-healing, our self-responsibility. And we can also have help. It doesn't mean you have to do everything in life alone. It just means we are the ones that ultimately do and make changes. So we have made an agreement with ourselves. We've authorized our highest inner level of wisdom to only present to us that which we are capable of receiving and perceiving and working with at any time. We're not going to be overwhelmed and go into a psychotic fit if we dare to look at our content, because we're not going to get that unless and until we're ready for it to present itself. And then more than likely it comes up as the wizard boo. We go, wow, I might not have been able to look at that 6 weeks ago because just the feeling alone put me in terror and shame and all that. But now I get it. And then you can choose to look at it. Now it's not the only way to deal with inner content, but it is a way. So are we kind of following along here? Now, before I keep going on, any question about any part of this or what it might mean or apply in any way, shape, or form, and don't be shy about it, because if I go off on some tangent that you want something else to be clarified, I don't want to do that. I want your help, because this has to be a dialogue. So sooner or later, people are going to start raising their hands and saying things, or asking questions, or posing challenges, and that's how we're going to evolve our conversation, okay? So anybody have a thought, a criticism, a question, a challenge, an inquiry at this point? Anybody else? Nobody's saying anything. Okay. All right. So how many people were attracted to the idea of coming here tonight based on something to do more with the UFO Meier case part than the connection to spiritual teaching and healing? How many people are more interested in that? Good. Okay. So this is good, because I want to get to those, answering those things too. How many people are more interested in the spiritual teaching and healing part? Okay, so you're all here. Anybody that has another focal point, raise your hand. So, yes, what would it be? Everything. That's easy.
Came to the
Yes.
right place.
How he got... Okay. So let's cover some of the Meier case. We'll come. We've got a little time, as much as you're willing to, spend here. So,
Is what you're teaching us shared something to you or Billy Meier?
okay, good. It is both, but I should delineate it. Some of the bullet points I've made: complete self-responsibility, seeing things as they are, neutral positive thinking. All of those are core elements of the spiritual teaching as brought forward by Meier and the prophets before him of this ancient teaching. I'm giving it in a simple kind of way. There's other cornerstones here. Somebody will say, even I mentioned cause and effect. Well, we all know that's a law, but that's spoken about so much in the teaching because, and I'll come right back to this, but connecting it to thought, and as we said, thought leads to feeling, leads to thought leads to action. That's a core element in the case, but that's tied in inextricably with cause and effect. We are creating every moment simply by each thought that is passing through, whether we're aware of them or not. We are creating our lives. We may be reinforcing old patterns, initiating new, having, whatever. Every thought is part of what leads us forward. As Meier has said, you are the smith of your own destiny. You forge that sword. You forge that path. So, to be clear about it, those are certain elements, cornerstones in the foundation of the spiritual teaching. And the reason I focus on them is because they're applicable to every minute of our lives. And while we can get into the deeper, more detailed, there's phenomenal texts in here that you just read and go, wow, that's deep. Let me read. And we read them again and again, not to believe it, but to think it through. Because there's something about that that's really worth pondering. So there's plenty of that. And I'm really not here. I've got one or two things that I might get to here just to read a thing that, okay. But when you start to read, and a ton of this is available for free online. For free. It's brilliant stuff. Yes, we have books and films and all the rest of it, but you can just get onto your computer and start your own search. So to come back to the moment about why was this man, Billy Meier, chosen to be a contact person for an extraterrestrial race? We're making the assumption right now that that's true. So why, if that's true, and we don't have to assume that it's true, and you can say, I don't believe it, it's fine. According to the information in the case. So now I can just kind of pull out what has been said here is the following. Every human being has, we're familiar with the term soul, right? Yeah. Loosen your head up. Yeah. So, according to the information in the case, what we term soul is a construct based right around here. The solar plexus, primarily, and also extends out a little bit. It's a plexus, it's the nerves, it's emotion, personality, elements, things. It's temporary. In each life, now that presupposes reincarnation. In each life, we have experiences, for better, for worse, all sorts of stuff, knowledge, wisdom, and as this personality, we fulfill each life as we do. And the personality dissolves upon death, but there's an eternal, immortal part of us, which we don't know factually in our time, place on earth now. It's called the human spirit. It's located kind of in the center of the brain as a, if you will, a little holograph of the universe, which the Plejaren referred to as the creation. This creation in which we live is itself not only a structure, it is consciousness, it is spiritual energy, it is the it of this universe. We won't go into how many other creations there could be because we've got enough to work with this idea, which is jamming up against a lot of belief systems all the time. This creation is the source and sustainer of everything within it. And every human being, wherever they may live, and this also presupposes that they're telling us the truth about life in other worlds, vast numbers of other human civilizations, Every human being, in addition to developing and having the temporary soul psyche, has the eternal, immortal human spirit. Animals have a different kind of spirit form. They don't have a consciousness in the same way we do. They are more instinct-based. We are conscious and able to think through things. You know, to have cognition and all of this. So the spirit is the part of every human being that reincarnates. The personality incarnates anew in every life. It forms. The 21st day, according to this info, now again, we can't prove this is a spirit. They're saying, well, there's a human spirit. On the 21st day, it comes in and attaches to the embryo. Now the fetus begins to develop with the heartbeat. The personality actually begins to develop at that time. Right there, 21st day. Sure, it's pretty, basic, but that's the beginning of the unfoldment of the new person, new personality, the new consciousness. But the spirit is ever reincarnating, evolving part of us is there. It's eternal. When we pass on, as the psyche is dissolving all that content, the spirit is moving, assimilating that information. It moves into a kind of etheric realm around the planet, erroneously often called the Akashic record, records, and the spirit goes into the beyond, where there is no, you don't see, why, it's Aunt Frida and Uncle Phil and all the kids. There's no consciousness there. There's no pastures with people gambling around with the sheep and the butterflies and all that stuff. Never mind the sheep. So, there's none of that going on. There's no awareness. And the spirit isn't self-aware at the state of evolution that we're at. It's irrelevant to even worry about that. Well, all we know is, well, I'm here, it's now, I guess everything worked out. Yeah, because creation's got all the laws working just fine. We don't need to pray to creation. If we're honest, we can say, okay, well, in the course of history going back, let's just go back 5,000 years, the Hebrews or whatever, and from that point on, all the people that have been praying to the various gods, most of the time, certainly in the earlier days, they're praying to slay everybody else. Well, fortunately, those prayers weren't answered, and neither were 99.9% of the rest of the prayers that people pray to a deity that they claim is omnipotent, yet they want to badger it endlessly to fix things that they think are wrong. My life isn't working, dear. May you please move this around here and get rid of so-and-so and bring me some more money. Oh, I thought everything was, this was a perfect creation. So when you go into the self-responsibility game, you're not worrying about badgering the guy in the sky if he does or doesn't exist. You're going, I can handle this. It's my life. What do I need to know? What do I need to learn? Where do I need to back up or go forward and take a left turn or a right turn? I'm capable of doing that. And then by doing that, we all look at this term self-esteem. You can't give that to anybody. You can't have a program in school that gives children self-esteem. You have self-esteem simply means you believe in yourself because you have evidence that that which you set out to do or be, even to have, that you accomplish it, that is a demonstration to yourself of your competence, your worth, your esteem, your capability, and it's up to you to develop that. You might say, well, I don't know where to begin. Set a couple easy goals. Don't start off with the big one. Start off with, seriously, start off saying, today I am washing the dishes, taking out the garbage, and writing one page in my diary. You check that off. You do whatever it is, 2 or 3 things every day, and before you know it, you're going, hey, wait a minute. You're getting such a reflection that you can't resist knowing. Years ago, I wrote a song about it that went into a self-esteem musical for kids. I just sat down and took a look at all the things I did. I really was surprised. I'm such a special kid. Now I'm feeling like a winner because I see what I have done. I'll do a whole lot more today. I'll have a lot more fun because I believe in myself. I believe in myself. It seems that I got used to falling short of all my goals, so it took a lot of strength in me to stop playing losers' roles. It wasn't long before I noticed that the doubts had disappeared, and suddenly I realized there's nothing left to fear because I believe in myself. I believe in myself, and there's nothing I can't do. No matter how dark the night, I got the light to shine right through, and I believe in myself. So that has to come as your experience with yourself. Someone can help you with that, show you, well, maybe if you sit down and take care of this, you'll know you can do it. Whatever it is, we, again, are 100% self-responsible. Now imagine if we're all, as we go from here on, day by day, and I'm not assuming that you're not self-responsible, but you're in a room with all these people and other people in your life. And let's assume that everybody's picking up on just kind of how to move that along in their lives. Now, you don't have to share the same beliefs. You have the same core values, behaviorally based in self-validation, in a neutral positivity, that which is going to assist you to do, have, and become all, so that love, peace, freedom, and harmony are indeed your experience. And now their experience is being shared with your family, the people closest to you, whether it's a legal bond, a brother or sister, a wife, a husband, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, a neighbor, the people at work. People are picking up on, hey, let's just tune into how to raise this up step by step. We don't have to change the world overnight. We'll change it simply by becoming that person for herself. We'll resonate with other like-minded people. They may know nothing about this material. You may use another reference point yourself for whatever it is whereby you reclaim your sovereignty and self-responsibility. So with Billy Meier and Reincarnation, what we're told, and I cannot prove it to you, is that the spirit that animates Billy Edward Albert Meier now is the same spirit that, in addition to many other people of no known stature or consequence probably, animated the personages named Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, we'll come back to him, and Muhammad. Wow, what a weird group in there. Oh, that's it. The person was talking about? It's okay. So, who is Emmanuel? What the information in this case presents something that's going to be uncomfortable for people, maybe relieving to others, total news. The man that we know as Jesus Christ, from the biblical New Testament and all that, according to this information, that personage is based on another person who really did live, but that even the name Jesus Christ never existed. Oh my gosh, here's real heresy. Wait a minute. There was a real man who lived 2,000 and change, ago. And he went through a lot of the things that we associate with this person, Jesus Christ. He was crucified. He didn't die on the cross. Ended up dying years later in India. Oh my goodness, what's this guy talking about? We're told that Emmanuel, who's ever heard? Many people have. You've heard the name in some Christmas songs too, right? Apart from the Meier case. But you go back to the Old Testament, Isaiah 7:14. And his name shall be called Emmanuel. Jump ahead into the New Testament. Matthew 1:23. And his name shall be called Emmanuel. It's only in the New Testament that we ever hear about Jesus Christ. Okay, fine. But there isn't one shred of actual evidence historically that this person, this man with this name, ever existed. And there were 60 historians living in the area where all of this supposedly was taking place. Not a one of them mentioned Jesus Christ. The guy that walks in water and raises the dead. Nobody. It came afterwards in the Gospels. And people were starting to, according to this, concoct a bunch of stuff. Some of it's based on things that man did, not all of it. There's a lot of stuff that was put in that was either allegorical, misunderstood, and what have you. But this was the true prophet, a powerful, true prophet of the time. He was crucified. He survived. On the third day, he came out of that cave. And there's a ton of information in this case as to what that's about, how it happened, what his mission was. Okay. He also, when he's excoriating the scribes and Pharisees of the time, you generation of vipers, we know that. And he's saying, as you've persecuted the true prophets before me, so shall you persecute me, so shall you falsify my teaching as you falsify the teaching of the true prophets before me, and in 500 years comes another man, a true prophet, who will teach the same spiritual teaching, and yet you will not recognize him as a true prophet. And his teaching, as all that preceded him, will also be falsified and lead to a false and evil cult, whose followers in distant times will give your distant descendants no peace until the end of time, unless your distant descendants make a just and conciliatory peace with the distant descendants of the rightful owners of this land. His name will be Muhammad. Oh my goodness, this isn't the Meier teaching? Yeah. And a bunch of stuff about what his real teaching was. No, he didn't marry 9-year-old girls. He protected women. He tried to institute things. But good luck. You're living in a time when nobody else except a handful of people can read and write. When you're out of here, they're going to do with your teaching what they wish. And people love power. And they love to corrupt it. And then you get the fundamentalists in any group, the radical types, whether they be in the past more Christian, Jewish, or Islamic, who spoil the whole deal for everybody because all they want to focus on is doing violence unto others, as we know today. As Meier foretold specifically in 1958, when he said, as retribution for the Crusades of hundreds of years ago, radical Islamic fundamentalists will spread irrepressible terror worldwide. This is a man that does not misuse his words. Even though we get the oftentimes altered translations from German, irrepressible, worldwide, and terror are translated. We are seeing the beginnings of that now with the IS. In 81, and Meier specifically foretold the coming fall of France to radical religion, adherence to radical religion within France, specifically Islam. This does not mean that Muslims outnumber radical Muslims, just as believers in any faith outnumber the radical in the faith. It doesn't mean that Muslims are going to cause France to fall. At which time the powers from the East, like Russia and China, will come in and take over the armaments of France and use it in extending attacks into Scandinavia and then against the U.S. through Alaska and Canada. All in the prophecies, you don't have to believe it. But a really kind of weird thing is that in 1987, in what's called the Enoch prophecies, Meier foretold it was Enoch from long ago, same spirit form. So I said, Meier foretold. He said, after the destruction of the WTC by terrorists, i.e. the World Trade Center, 1987, America will go on a worldwide effort to control and dominate everybody politically and economically under the guise of peaceful globalization and fighting terrorism. He goes on to say that the Russians will move their troops to a city called Arkhangelsk. It's in northern Russia, Siberia, so. 1987. In about 2008 or 10, after these documents were already online, verifiably, let alone even earlier translated to English, the Russians moved their troops to Arkhangelsk. In the same document, of course, he also foretold the Ebola epidemic. We just had the Ebola epidemic. I don't know if it was the only epidemic of it. That was the first true epidemic of Ebola. There are ways to know that his publication was at the time that he said it, even when there's no book left or no letter left. It's not cheery stuff, some of it, because it's a warning to us to take personal responsibility to turn these events around so that we don't continue to cede our power to completely irresponsible lunatic leaders who will otherwise lead our world into destruction. We have enough to deal with coming environmental destruction. Meier being the first person in 1951 to describe unnatural man-made climate change first person. All the manifestations of it with the increased intensity and frequency, storms, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, blizzards, tsunamis, seaquakes, spelled it out. 1951, when he was 14 years old. In 1958, in addition to foretelling the whole deal with radical Islamic terrorism, he foretold the United States of America will have 2 wars with Iraq, 2 U.S.-Iraq Gulf Wars, they call them Gulf Wars. The second war will be led by a president who will be the son of a former president. It will lead to an unbelievable disaster, terrorism, etc. George Bush, H.W. Bush, wasn't president yet, let alone Trump. This happened well after Meier published that, sent the letter around to the world. He foretold by name the AIDS epidemic, the meth epidemic, the coming use of portable phones and plastic credit cards. He foretold that every home would have not only a television, which in 1958, slowly getting, but a computer. Every home will have a computer. Isn't the computer a thing that fills the room in 1958? And that these will be interconnected electronically around the world. News, media, everything will flow into your home. The internet. And 155 other things that he laid out specifically, and they are unfolding before our very eyes. We don't know about this. Most people in the world don't even know who Billy Meier is. Gray aliens abducting people and floating them through walls. Oh yeah, ooh, evil aliens. I'm being abducted all the time by aliens. And reptilians are marching through my living room in search of mice and insects. Really? But you haven't heard of Billy Meier? No, it's evil aliens. So we've been sold a bill of goods, primarily, about so-called evil aliens that logic dismantles for us. Well, if we want to really look at it, this isn't really so much about showing that it's not really happening from evil aliens. When actual abduction events are occurring, they are conducted by secret military, including animal mutilations and stuff. Nobody that can travel 400 light years probably already has a lifespan of hundreds of years, part of the evolutionary process of being able to master space travel that doesn't start out as being able to go into hyperspace. You have to go for hundreds of years sometimes in the beginning phases to get from A to B. Lifespans are long, intelligence is high. They're not coming here to get our corrupted DNA, our crazy emotions, to create a new race with us. My gosh, they have to be loony. And they certainly aren't carrying their lunch trays around underground at Area 51, working for the U.S. government. No. There's no logic to that. And there happens to also be zero evidence for it. But it's been sold so successfully that when people have upsetting experiences, either from a kind of mass belief system, mass hypnosis, a little touch of psychosis or neurosis, sleep paralysis, overactive imagination, you name it, or a real trauma from a secret military out, it's got to be somebody from outer space yanking me out through the window, whatever. This is what's happened to us, and we believe we're tricked by the phantasmagoria flooding in from the internet. Everybody's got an anonymous screen name, thinking somehow they're protecting themselves from something by not being who they are. Could it get any crazier than that? I'm going to use a different name, and that way I'll be safe. From who? The government knows who everybody is. Forget that. Meier foretold the NSA Microsoft connection into your computers 2 years before Snowden ever revealed it. And they said, the CIA, look out, they've got weaponry that your armed forces would envy. The intelligence apparatus just has got its tentacles into everything. Don't worry. You're safer using your real name, so people know who you are. People say, well, where is Joe? Not, where is, Space City 907? Who? He's gone. What happened to him? Do you know it was a him? How do you know it wasn't a her? Well, I don't know. Where is it? She? We don't know. Disappeared. Well, it's actually, Irving Snart over there got hit by a truck and he's in intensive care, but nobody knows. All these people that might be concerned about him, they don't know who he is online. That's just one element of it. If you don't have your own identity, If you're willing to give away a part of your birthright out of some fear, you've already been dominated. You've already lost. Oh, I'm going to hide from the authorities. They won't know. The authorities know who you are. Nobody else now knows. Nobody's going to care. And you're just a number. The next step, you're going to take a biochip, aren't you? Well, wow. We've been sold so much stuff without thinking about it. So we come back to this question of self-responsibility, seeing things as they are, deciding to be the masters, the smiths of our own destiny. And we can do that without anybody. You know, Big Brother can be standing around staring at you. You're walking around, you're just processing stuff and building all sorts of capabilities inside of yourself for yourself. You can be recreating your life at any stage of your life. Really. Now, it isn't a promise of immortality in your current vehicle here. It isn't a promise that you won't have troubles, difficulties, illnesses, challenges, that something eventually won't get you, because it's real lifetime here. But it kind of is a promise that if you start working this thing, you're going to make the difference that you've never made before in your life. And this, I'm not trying to sound like some self-help guy. Isn't it? Okay, buy a book. No, there's great books about how to think. You can go online for free and start to get the thrust of this. If you said, let's see, I'm going to be 100% self-responsible, see things as they are, observe, control my thoughts. So if I don't want to keep thinking that, at least I know I'm thinking, how about I'm going to change it to, you're creating new universes inside of you. Think about this. We all dream at night, right? Sometimes people say, I never dream. You don't remember your dreams, but you dream. Those of us that have ever had a dream that we remember, right? Raise your hand. Anybody ever have a dream you remember? Thank you very much. So what happens is, in our sleeping state, we create a universe or multi-dreams. You know, many of these things, they're amazing, right? I mean, we create stuff for better or for worse. We have love affairs, we lose people, we gain things, we fly, we drown, we do it all. Try to do that in your waking state. Sit down in a chair and crank that one up. You can't do it, can you? But that is you, a part of you, a part of me. We can do that because we have that capacity. The secret sciences have been kept from us, the power and might of our thoughts, of who we are, to exercise that inner muscle. And really, nobody knows, but you know. And then others who are doing the like work come together. Will you ever talk about some of those specifics or not? The things that you do want to talk about, the things that you do want to work on, to strengthen each other. You're playing that game consciously, actively, and you're helping one another. I have this song, it's called The Child of Love. There have been those throughout the ages who have come here to enslave us, offering promises of power without love. And though only love can save us, it is looked for by the bravest inside of us as well as from above. When divided into nations, we fell into desperation, forgetting there has always been enough. Some believed their kind was better, but the truth will stand forever. Each one of us is but a child of love. Child of love. Who is your mother? Do you recognize each one you see as part of your own family? Child of love, sister and brother. What will it take for us to be loving one another? And now we're sailing to the threshold where the golden age will unfold, and those stormy seas we sail will be rough, but we're helping one another, one with compass, one with rudder, on a ship of freedom called the Child of Love. That's us. We are on that ship together. Whether some of us are sleeping a lot down below, you're getting seasick, the ride is bumpy, or not, or we've decided to help. Pull up them sails, work the rudder, work the wheel, the whole deal. So the secret sign, that which has been kept from us, is that each human being carries this full potential, because our evolutionary destiny, the Spirit, through countless tens and hundreds of thousands of incarnations, reincarnations of the Spirit, new incarnations as personalities, eventually we, the Spirit we become one with, merges back into the creation for the purpose of a process of slumber to birthing yet another creation. You can read about all this stuff in the teaching, and a lot of it is like you go, wow, or what do I do with that, or is that true, and blah, blah. Here we are, it's now, and we want to start moving this on. So does this, and this is the question to you, does this apply to your healing? Or to the healing of somebody you may know? Does it apply? What does healing mean? Self-healing. Where does it begin? Where do you start? Usually, right where you are, right? Who hasn't had some kind of a condition or an infirmity that you thought in the moment, certainly, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get over this, whatever it is, from a cold to a cancer, from a headache to a heartbreak, whatever it is, because the reality of suffering. Was it Einstein who said something about relativity? Is what was it? He said, oh yeah, if you sit on a hot stove for a second, it feels like an hour, and if you're with a beautiful woman for an hour, it feels like a second. It's like things flip around, oh, this burnt, you're there, and where'd she go? So things are relative. When we're in suffering, when we're in discomfort, when we're in illness, whatever. There's so much that goes on. Well, how do you take this idea of the self-responsibility into the realm of healing? Now, that doesn't mean you don't seek assistance from whatever type of medical, traditional, holistic, alternative, whatever, modalities, practitioners, and all. But you are the potentiator. One of the people involved in the study of this material is a very high-ranking doctor at a very big cancer clinic in New Mexico. He wrote an article on placebo and nocebo. Are people familiar with placebo? Anybody not sure? Because I don't want this to go by. Placebo, being like, the classic is the sugar pill you give the doctor says, well, you only need to take this for about, you take it twice a day for a week and a half, and by that time, and people, they take it and they go, well, thank you, doctor, it's a week and a half later and I'm all better. And the doctor says, sugar pills work under this condition, let's say. Or a nocebo is you take into yourself something, or a belief or a thought or someone's opinion, that you can't be better, that you're conflicted forever with whatever it is, and that becomes the medicine that you treat yourself with. And that, this doctor wrote that he is very careful with his patients because he knows that what he says to his patients, if he gives them nocebo in his communication, or placebo, or just plain truth, it will have a bearing, an effect, a resonance, depending on the people. And he doesn't want to harm anybody by giving somebody who's vulnerable to a negative thing. So he's very careful how he presents truth and optimism in measured amounts so that there's a neutral positive. He will tell people the truth, but he also tells them the potential and the positive aspect. Because we do still, remember, we're talking about taking back responsibility, but we do go to authorities and experts and things. There's nothing wrong with that. Not every authority and expert is right about everything. Scientists, we have people that we try to bring the Meier material to. I try to reach people with scientific information. And they won't even deign to look at it themselves. Well, there's no peer review. I said, that's right. He doesn't have any peers. How about that? Anybody else you know has gone to outer space, clown? But it's worse than that. Because somebody gets a degree, letters after their name, there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't make them bad. But a lot of people forget 10, 15, 30 years ago, they were students sitting in the classroom looking up at the current authority figure, the professor who was prior to that, a student sitting in a classroom. You're not a deity. You're a servant, hopefully a servant of truth, because you're going to look through the telescope. And I have sent, on the Meier case, I have sent information to NASA, to all these people. Most of them won't even acknowledge because they're too afraid. They are literally afraid. I'm the expert. If I say anything, one way or the other, I could lose my tenure, I might lose my paycheck, I might lose this, that. These people sell out. Fortunately, they're not the only people that have responded in a way to this material. Several years back, a man named David Froning, astrophysicist, aeronautical engineer, got on my stage at the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles. 450 corporate clients at the hotel were invited by the hotel to this presentation on the Meier case. Films and photographs and everything. At a certain point, I said, I'd like you to know that here tonight is also David Froning, astrophysicist, aeronautical engineer, who's studied the Meier case. Oh, somebody raised their hand. Well, can Professor Froning come over here, Dr. Froning, say something? Yeah. Well, what do you think of this Meier thing we've just seen? I said, oh, I will only tell you that I work with a small group of scientists. This is a man who at the time already, 25 years with McDonnell Douglas, defense industry, top secret security clearance, highly respected astrophysicist. Let me tell you that I work with a small group of scientists, and from Mr. Meier's film, his information, we've made breakthroughs in our understanding of hyperspace propulsion and zero-point energy. We have arrived at figures through our complex calculation formulas, which are theoretical, within 20% of the figures that this man published in 1979. If this is a hoax, he's being advised by very scientifically knowledgeable people up there in the boonies in Switzerland on the farmland. Thank you. Okay. Recently, Matthew Wiskowitz, aerospace engineer, worked on the space shuttle, worked on the space station, Rockwell, Boeing, top secret security, INTJ, Myers-Briggs, the whole thing, big, long CV, I have it on. He came forward and said, hey, of course the case is real, and I'll join you on stage anytime I can. And stand up for it. Kenneth Smith just retired as the operations director at Orbital Rocket Systems. I think it's Tucson. They send those rockets up, satellites and all this stuff. Retired from there. He said, well, of course it's real. I'll join you and Matthew on stage. There's another guy still working at Orbital, worked at Area 51. He never saw any aliens carrying their lunch trays, but he worked there. Top secret security clearance, still has it. Federal government. He said the same thing. He says, tell Michael. Of course. He sent an email finally with his own email. He says, yeah, please don't share my name. That's fine. He says, of course, Meier case is the real deal. We know that. And there are people that know it that won't talk about it, but we know it's real. So, now that's just to say to balance the ledger a little, because the skeptics, suck up all the oxygen in the room, and the scientists with their snooty noses in the air who don't want to acknowledge anything, while we have an asteroid called Apophis coming towards Earth that Meier warned about in 1981, calling it the red meteor. We illustrated this online in comic book form. I've sent stuff to NASA. There's nothing to worry about, NASA tells everybody. It's going to miss us by zillions of light years. Well, it's funny. There's a graph somebody did for me and sent it to me. It shows NASA's, when they discovered Apophis in 2004, 23 years after Meier announced this thing, here's what they were saying. It's going to closest proximity to Earth. The most recent estimate is this thing is getting closer and closer in their estimates, and just a few years ago, they changed the estimate of its size to within 25 meters of what Meier published. And while the Russians, after we published this information, made it public, the Russians called for an international scientific effort, which is what the Plejaren said you're going to need to deflect it with a nuclear charge. Don't blow it up. It'll rain down on you. And the Russians said, we need an international effort. Why? Because they're concerned this thing is going to hit between the North Sea and the Black Sea. That's their neighborhood. Generally speaking, when that thing hit, it's going to disrupt a lot. It'll disrupt everything. But that's going to be the immediate theater of it. They like to use that word with war. Theater of war. Ordnance, theater. Everything takes it's a euphemism. Well, anyway, so we've got this thing, and now, of course, Meier was told several years ago that the Vatican, in addition to the Russians and all, the Vatican is reading his material and will start to use elements of it in order to bring more people into the church. Did you notice the Pope has talked about environmental protection? He's catching proverbial hell from conservatives. And he's talking about limiting family size and not overbreeding like bunnies. The core element of our problems on Earth, as put forward in the Meier case. You're overpopulated. It leads to all your grief, your strife, your lack of resources, your pollution, the lack of a planet to produce enough food for you, people fighting with each other, the planet can't even process all the waste products, you polluted the air, you polluted the sea. It's because there's too many people. No, it isn't about killing people off. We're doing that all the time anyhow. It's about, okay, birth, cessation, let the natural attrition, let people live their lives. Don't start replacing everybody every second. Let it come down so you can start to see your way through to things. This state is running out of water. It's not going to magically fix itself. You know, and you can pray to whomever you want, wherever you think they're hiding out or flying around. They're not going to be able to fix it. Not because they don't exist, because it's not going to happen. Sorry. And there's another problem coming to the overall area. And this is something I've talked about because it's in the Meier case, and you deserve to know whatever you choose to do about it. It's going to sound a little strange, perhaps. Perhaps. I have to always remember how strange it sounds. All this stuff can sound pretty strange. All right. In 1978, Meier has these investigators come over in their process of investigating his case. Is this man pulling a hoax? Does he make models? Does he have collaborators? Where is his financial resources? Where is the technology? What's the And they're finding that none of those things exist. He doesn't have people that are helping him. There's no models. When they actually have models made at MGM and photographed, they say, well, this doesn't read the same way in the computer. His photos are coming up as large objects, 23 feet in diameter, blah, blah, blah. These are coming up as models. So, 1978, in the kitchen in Switzerland, where a lot of the chat goes on all the time between people from everywhere, 3 lead investigators, the elders, and Wendell Stevens are there. Some of the Swiss have joined, and Meier's there talking, and his English is clear and good enough, but, you know, he's also doesn't speak comfortably, completely fluent. So when he mentions the San Francisco earthquake, Wendell says, you mean the earthquake from 1906? And he says, no. They're coming, San Francisco earthquake. Thank you, Scott. Brought me an illustration. I'll explain what all this is about. You'll be able to look at the table. Okay, so they're going, what are you talking about? There was an earthquake. What coming? He said, okay, just a minute. So it goes out of the room, comes back with a little yellow envelope. There's a few folks here that remember that Kodak envelopes were yellow and there were actually photographs in them, right? And you send your film away, you get it back, you get the photos and the negatives in there. Nowadays we go click, it's all on the camera. So, he goes, okay, puts 11 photographs, as I recall that was the number, I don't know if there were more, on the table. And they look down, they go, what the heck? And they pick up the photos and they start passing them around. Remember, these 3 people, Stevens is a trained military investigator trusted by the U.S. Air Force to investigate UFOs in 1947 on. Lee and Britt elders are not slouches. They are trusted by Fortune 500 companies, banks, corporations to be very diligent and make sure that there's no espionage, electronic espionage. They have to pay attention or their credibility is gone, and so is their work. They are studying these photographs. They determine these are not paintings. These are photographs, and these photographs are, incontrovertibly, this is San Francisco. It's in a state of destruction. Transamerica building is a crack in the pyramid part of it. It's down on the ground. Buildings are leaning into each other. Buildings that don't exist in 1978 are in these photographs. There's fire and smoke, and they're going, Billy says, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to tell you when this occurs. There's reasons they won't tell us when certain events occur. They just figured it's not good for people to know the exact thing. It's up to people to be responsible if they get a warning, to act on it if they're going to do it. Okay, thanks. And I go, wait a minute, look at the cars. In 1978, the cars were pretty big. They had fins, they had boxes, you could play ping pong on the hood, it was a big thing, right? I often thought about that. You see certain things, why don't we set up a net right there? So, they're going, well, they don't look like the cars of today. They're rounder, they're more bug-like, there's a lot more glass, and those windshields are bigger glass in your windshield. Some of the glass goes into the roof line, and all those cars don't have external side view mirrors. No mirrors on the outside of the car. Now we already have cameras in the car for backing up, don't we? A lot of the vans and cameras. and cars have these cameras for backing up. There's a little screen, tweet, tweet, beep, beep, beep. Oh! The next step. Oh, bless you, Ben. The next step, of course, is that we're going to have no mirrors in the outside. Are you sure Toyota, Mercedes, Tesla already have the concept cars with a full camera eliminating the outside mirrors? When those go into production, and you start to see, I mean, unless anything changes, but he photographed it already. The suggestion is people to consider the information. As a matter of fact, he said people should not live by shorelines at all. It's too dangerous with the rising sea levels, the coming tsunamis and sea quakes, even flooding or lakes and rivers. Well, we see that in many places. You know, suddenly a town, you see one of your cars floating by. Gee, how did that happen? Well, floods. So it's kind of that deal of a word to the wise. Now, it's hard. I try to always pay attention to how difficult it is to receive as credible something like that. What happened at that time, the Plejaren people took the photos from Meier because he wasn't supposed to show the photos. He could warn people about it, he wasn't supposed to show the photos. At the same time, it is said, according to the information in the case, another race that occasionally works with the Plejaren impulsed the idea of this quake into an artist who put some illustrations into Geo magazine. You'll be able to see this on the table over there. And he has a version of it that is very close to what Meier had photographed. So skeptics had accused, oh, Billy Meier just copied the illustration in Geo magazine. No, Billy Meier had 11 photographs. He didn't do paintings. Even if he photographed this painting, it'd be a painting, not the city. So when we start to look at all this information, let's come back to something I didn't say. We're turning to the future here. The most important discovery in human history would be the confirmed existence of actual extraterrestrial, intelligent extraterrestrial life, exceeded only by the confirmed corroborated contact between extraterrestrials and human beings or a human being. We are taking for granted all the time in this mythical UFO community, oh my gosh, you know, they're lined up from here to Arcturus, you know, just come down, abduct people, scare people. No. We haven't yet proved in all the myth of the UFO community that everything we see, and there certainly are objects in the sky, that they're even extraterrestrial. While they're sometimes natural objects, and that's even, Meier had written about this some time ago, but sometimes swarms of insects actually are misidentified as UFOs. A scientific finding on that came out like about a year or two later. But when you see objects, there are craft in the sky. They're not, most of them are not from extraterrestrial sources. Secret military, there has been for over 100 years since, well, no, since 1920, it's almost 100 years. Various countries at secret military levels have had alternative craft in development, including anti-gravitic. The Nazis had it towards the end of the Second World War. Some of that technology migrated with them to Brazil and Uruguay. Those plans were appropriated at the end of the war by the US, Great Britain, Russia, Canada. And so, yeah, there's people who photographed or filmed things in the sky. There are other craft. The majority are not from another world. So the confirmed existence of real intelligent extraterrestrial life, number one, exceeded by contact with them. Contact was offered to the Carter administration in 1979 by the Plejaren through Meier, through the elders. A letter was written. Carter turned it down. Can you imagine what would have happened had we been able to benefit from that? Instead, we have all the insanity of politics and, pardon me, belief systems and people coming against each other thinking they have the one true divine religion and they're going to cut your head off if you don't just bow down to it. So, we don't have to run in fear of anything, including earthquakes or whatever, but if we take responsibility for what we've heard, which means we can also dismiss it, we can pursue it, we can ignore it, we can venture into it a little or a lot. If we come to a place where we understand that there's a credible foundation for this information, for what's going on here, and we start to see how it may apply to us in our lives, we start to act accordingly, and we are taking back our sovereignty, our personal responsibility, right? And in a thing like where somebody stands here and says, there's going to be a mega quake, it's going to devastate San Francisco, and by the way, in case you don't know, Meier in 2005 published a warning from the Plejaren. There will be a 9.0 earthquake that runs for 5 straight minutes in the northwest, the Cascadian subduction zone. It will produce a huge tsunami coming in the Portland area and all that, followed by more quakes and tsunamis. In 2007, Oregon State University predicted the exact same thing. We documented his stuff. It was online before Oregon State. Someone just sent me a link today that now there's a new prediction about this new quake that they know for certain is going to hit up there, but nobody knows for sure. But people aren't moving yet. And all. This is hard. We're creatures of habit. We don't generally, feel that we're that fluid that we can give up and replace and replant. We don't take it seriously enough. If we knew a threat was real, let alone imminent, our sense of survival would assert itself. We might, in a sense of panic, flee rather than start to make preparation, which would be better. I lived in LA for over 40 years. Then I went down to Brazil to do a lecture, and this really nice guy brought me down to do a presentation. He said, hey, why don't you move here? I said, okay, I'd never done anything like that. Like, I'm just going to up and move into a foreign country where I don't speak the language. Portuguese, if you speak it, it's great. It's a little like Spanish, it's a little like Italian, and it's a little like nothing else. So, I did. I told my daughter, hey, I'm giving up my apartment, let's have a yard sale, give my card, some other people pick up the lease, and move. Dad, are you sure? Yeah. Okay, so off I went, 5.5 months, and then after a couple of experiences that happened, including one of the small monitoring craft came one night, just what scared me first. They're like egg-shaped things that are glow. It was okay. It's October 3rd, 2011, finished at 10 o'clock, I finished a radio interview online, and I go, I've got to open those doors and step outside. So, that was impelled to do that. I opened the door, oh, it's a star. Maybe it's a firefly. Oh my God. And I jumped for a second. This thing starts to come down, and goes off to my left. 15 seconds, 20 seconds at the most. I went, wow. So a week later, I'm in Switzerland, I said, Billy, oh yeah, little monitoring craft, telemeter craft came by. They see them in Switzerland all the time. People go over to the center. There's this monitoring craft that they have that circle around and gather information on Earth and stuff like this, whatever. Oh, they just come by and see how they are. And then shortly after that, I came back to the States, and then I had this feeling, it's time to go back to LA, and I think I'm going to move to Arizona. Oh, I like it here. Well, kind of like a knowing. It's just time to go. It turned, okay, I don't usually talk about this other part, and I didn't think about it until at least a year later. When I got back from the trip from Switzerland to Brazil, I was living in a really cute little chalet on this private grounds that this guy had. My friend had gotten me this place. They had all these little chalets. Nobody's living there except him. I'm up here, and then his work crew lives over here somewhere. So he said, I was at that point I could understand enough. He spoke a few words of English. My Portuguese was getting better. We hand language, we figure stuff out. So the gist of it was that when I had left for Switzerland, just shortly after I left, he said, we're talking about a gated facility with high iron gates. Solid, you have to have a key to the door. He said, I was watching television, and I looked over the window, and there's 2 figures that like men against the window, like the shadows. Nobody can get in here. And he says, I got up to go to the door. By the time I got outside, they were walking away into the distance. I couldn't figure it out. And later on, I thought, there is a negative group, terrestrials, nobody from outer space, terrestrial group in Brazil that are enemies of the Meier case, I've never met them, I'm glad I haven't, because there's some nasty folks, and they have alternative to the craft. And I thought, afterwards, I'm thinking a year later, wait a minute, maybe that impulse I had to leave lovely mountains of Brazil at that time was like, get going, you know. I don't know, I can't prove it. I only know that, you know, I loved it there, and then suddenly I came back from Switzerland, I was like, gotta go back to Illinois. And so then I ended up, I moved inland because I'm living not far from the ocean in LA, and I'm thinking, if I am going to talk about that, I can't just live here at the beach and pretend like I should tell people to not live by oceans. I had another ingredient in my life too. I met somebody, and we had a short relationship and married. It was a very unusual thing, but it was great. But we moved up to Arizona, to Flagstaff, Bunce Park area, where I've kind of remained ever since. And I still, 36 years of research into this thing, from the first day I found out about it, I still go sometimes, I don't know, I mean, how can you bring this thing or that part of it to people and either not scare them or not give them something that is so inaccessible and inconceivable that they're not going to pay attention and check it out? So we come back to this idea of self-healing, right? Because that was part of the thing that I don't want to neglect it. So rather than carry on here, I want to open it up for any questions on that and just tell you, I can only give you two things. One, my best answer or opinion, and two, my best recollection of what's in the Meier case about something. So if you have any, yeah.
So you said like the manual like the crucifixion. Is there any more evidence of the cross and you have?
There had been, what the friend here, Clarence, has asked, is there any evidence of the artifacts of the crucifixion? Because he's familiar with the fact that Meier was allegedly shown these artifacts, a remanufactured cross of the crucifixion, spear of destiny, bloody crown thorns, and blood encrusted nails. Underneath the Giza pyramid, a mile below the surface, taken there by Esca, an extraterrestrial. What we know now from this material, again, you'd have to read this to see how you feel. Is it a fairy tale or does it seem plausible? What we are told is that that whole facility under there was closed off. Once they removed those people who were underneath it, there was a race of people there who were running a lot of stuff on the planet through their impulses and influence and control, mainly through the major religions and certain political things. They had remanufactured that cross and crown and spear because they had someone under a kind of mind control. He's known alternately either as Reinhold Schmidt or O. Reinhold Schmidt. If you look into UFO lore, it's called the California corn merchant Reinhold Schmidt. He was put into certain kind of states of suggestibility where he was being led to believe that not only was he on UFOs and meeting with extraterrestrials, but that he was the second coming. And he would be able to lead people to the actual artifacts of it, so that this group, known as the Ba'ath, or the Giza intelligences, could unite all religions under one world religion to better control everybody through this false, so-called second coming. Pretty bizarre stuff, though. That's part of it.
I got kind of a weird question. You mentioned something about the human spirit incarnating into our bodies, when it's time to incarnate. And did Billy Meier ever explain that UFO hybrids? Has he ever explained that there are pure humans anywhere in the universe or here, and are we supposed to be related to aliens in some way?
Okay, so the question is about alien-human hybrids, pure humans, relationships of humans to Plejaren, formerly called Pleiadians and all. What's about that? Well, first of all, in this material, what we're told is that the universe is full of evolving human life, 343 different skin colors, really, anybody who's a bigot is going to really not know where to start. You know, oh my goodness, is it? So, millions upon millions of races, even with the beginning of the creation, but human beings, we start in a very non-recognizable form physically. And this is all, you know, process of evolution. Other humans have been in the universe for millions of years before us. Some of them have been progenitors of some of our races on Earth. We've had indigenously arising human life here. We've had human beings who came here also as progenitors, space traveling already, members of white, black, what we would call Asian races. We have their names in the literature. Certain people who, so-and-so was the father of the red race, so-and-so was the father of the black race, so-and-so was the father of the white race. So these people didn't start the only branches necessarily of certain races. They came from the stars already as space travelers, and in some cases, we're going back a couple tens of millions of years. People would come and go. Sometimes they'd stay for a while, then they'd leave. Sometimes people got stranded when their technology failed, and they're in primeval time. There's no factories. And then what can happen? They either die off, or they start to devolve a bit into more tribal, non-technological people. They have to survive in primeval times. It means animals and insects and all sorts of things. They may disappear, or if they survive that, they may then have to restart their evolution back up with the times to become a fractional semblance of what they originally were millions of years ago. So, millions of years are a blink of the cosmic eye. You know, oh my gosh, we've got hundreds of years before everybody on Earth is kind of able to think, can study the material. It's nothing. Millions of years. But the alien human hybrid, as it's popularly represented in UFO lore, is utter nonsense. And it's like Billy said, where's the babies? You know, where are all these alien hybrids? So we get too easily misled by the most preposterous of things. But if you say, there's a man in Switzerland for 73 years, despite 22 documented attempts in his life, has been meeting with extraterrestrials for the purpose of assisting us in every way to become self-responsible, assure our own future survival, thrive, establish love, peace, freedom, and harmony, leave behind the age of beliefs for the age of truth and knowledge. People go, oh, it's got to be a hoax. But I can play these video games, and I'm so-and-so. I'm like, okay. And we go back to that, right? So, as far as the healing part of it goes, if anybody has a question, know that you probably have a question that other people have too, and there's no guarantee that I have an answer, but I would try to address your question, how this would relate to self-healing. I know we've discussed some of it. Anybody have a question? Yes?
Yeah, is there any predictions or predictions, is he making predictions still on the future, and what are some more, do you know of any more predictions that you can share with us?
Okay, so the question is Meier making any more predictions, any predictions I can share with you? What about the future? When I was over there about 7.5 weeks ago, I sat again with Billy, and I caught 3 clips on film. I wanted him to say a few words about some things. At this point, and actually for several years, the Plejaren people who give him a lot of certain types of predictions. Meier is a prophet. He knows how to predict things himself. And as a matter of fact, sometimes he asks them questions about stuff he's already published his own predictions on when he was 21. Don't tell me, what's the coming with this? And they go, well, and he's already, but it's kind of like he plays a little dumb in a way. But to answer your question, let's put it this way. The Apophis asteroid coming, he's not optimistic that the scientists will get over themselves and their egos and come together and work to deflect this. That's one thing. The situation with Russia, he said the problem is really, really serious, that unless the US, the EU, the European Union, which he foretold before it was ever formed, unless they, with Merkel as the American puppet, stop provoking Russia, stop provoking, you can trigger what would technically be the Fourth World War. And of course, that would come here in every way, shape, and form. As far as the IS goes, the Islamic thing, he addressed it again. He said, this can set our world back to the Dark Ages. Not set the Middle East back to the Dark Ages, which they're working on already. Set the world back. Because in November of last year, I got an unusual request from some information saying, bring a petition forward, notify the president. How did you? The Plejaren and Meier suggested you need a true international combat force of at least 300,000 well-armed and directed soldiers to go against the now more than 100,000 IS fighters who are conscienceless, lunatic psychopaths who cannot be rehabilitated out of their fanaticism. You have to bring this force against them, offer them surrender, and if not, you take them down militarily. If not, your world can go back to the Dark Ages. This is going to be infinitely worse than Al-Qaeda. All we have to do is look at some of the horrendous headlines and things even that don't come into the news, what they're doing to children to turn them into murdering machines. This is beyond anything we've really grasped yet. It is and will be here as well as other countries. He said the Americans who go and they bomb in Syria, they bomb over there, this is to sell munitions. It's a half-hearted effort. It requires a concerted, directed military force. Unfortunately, because this is a lunatic situation funded by the royal family of Qatar. These people as well have looted Iraqi banks of hundreds of millions of dollars. They're enormously well funded. So this, Meier just shook his head and he said, this is going to be beyond anything the world has seen. And that's why when he said in 1958, as retribution for the Christian Crusades, radical fundamentalist Islamic terrorism will be spread irrepressibly worldwide. It's already moving into, and Europe is going to have enormous trouble. Italy, well, the Vatican is going to, a lot of this has been in the prophecies for decades. They spelled it out. What's going to happen in Italy, what's going to happen to the church, what's going to happen to the, it's not pretty stuff. But again, it's kind of unless human beings go, wait a minute, stop with this nonsense we're doing. This is real. We're not concerned because they're killing those people over there. That's the wrong way to think. We've got to recognize this is real. These people have no compunction. See, they know the might of the thoughts in a way. We're talking about the might of the thoughts, speaking about how we heal ourselves, how we form communities. These people know only one part of the might of the thoughts. If they focus on their lunatic purpose, and they come together and they're funded and they're armed, they will just keep marching to that purpose. All the so-called evil elite of the world know the might of the thoughts, the part of it about going for what you want. They don't have the considerations that good people have, that even in conscience we start to question a little bit. Well, now if I want this, but what are the consequences here if I do this or do that?
If this is a carnal reaction, isn't it just the best thing to do is just let it burn itself out?
Well, actually, there's no such thing really as karma. It's cause and effect, number one. And you can't let something like that burn itself out because that believes that everything and everybody in the world is tinder. They have ceaselessly, without conscience, destroyed precious artifacts from cultures already, and hundreds, if not thousands of people already, children, men and women. Now, I'm not here to paint the picture of how gruesome this stuff is. Just go online or read whatever you read. It's going on now. And you may say, well, what am I going to do about it? This comes back down to we start taking personal power here. If people do this, if we start just trusting ourselves to do these evolutionary steps in the here and now, whatever age and stage we're at, we're going to find that other like-minded people, we're going to form these webs, this matrix of interconnected, positive, evolutive growth.
Now, you said some cancer. What is the main cause? Is there any
There can be a number of causes of cancer, as it can be true for other diseases, and in these times, because of environmental pollution, because of contaminated things, some people are more susceptible, even genetically predisposed. Sometimes it's something that a person takes on that they're not predisposed to, that a traditional good medical care gets them through. Sometimes they get help with alternative care. The primary thing is they have to also work with this same thing that we all work with. Nobody knows really, you could go out and break your knee. I'm not wishing this on you, but we then have to deal with whatever we have, and we've got to keep coming back to taking control of our emotions that flare up and run us crazy, right? The things that come from within us often undo us. So a disease like cancer, okay, they've also said sometimes there's emotional, psychological factors, heredity, environment. There can be many factors to something. How do you set your thoughts so as to make manifest your healing, your best self, your strength? I'll tell you, I haven't encountered anything that bad, but there's things that have happened to me even in the past few years. I couldn't get out of bed, or it's all over, I'm done, I can't go do my work, anything. And then I remember somebody read and go, wait a minute, okay, I think what I'm going to do is go and get some acupuncture. At least start that process. Then I'm going to work on myself because I know where these points are. And then I'm going to get my thinking straight. Everybody can do something. Start to listen to their own inner thing.
Do they say like treatments, does it hear in the sleep like that? What would be the best?
They've said at times that the best thing to do is to get chemo. This is the best that we have right now for certain things. Billy's told people, maybe you go and you get the chemo so that that particular manifestation there gets handled, so you can get your energy back. At the same time, you want to improve your diet, good. You want to get support, you want to, whatever. It's just like, use the tools that are available. Listen inwardly, check the results. If there was a woman yesterday at a presentation, we were in Kelseyville, and it was so interesting. She came up and was that 5 minutes? Oh.
I think we need a 5-minute break.
Okay, I'll finish this briefly.
Thank you.
A woman up in Kelseyville, she walks in, phenomenal energy and all that stuff. She said, I was wheelchair ridden, and she carries on, but she was debilitated. She couldn't stand or walk. She had come down with some tick-borne illness. I don't know if it was technically Lyme disease or not. It turned into MS, and then somehow she took control of it, and she regenerated herself. She used medical help. I've got a daughter who came down with Hashimoto's thyroid, hypothyroidism. She sat for 6 months on a couch like a piece of paper. It debilitated her. Medication sent her heart rate up. She thought she was having heart attacks. And she was in early 20s, not even the typical thyroid profile. And then she said, Dad, they're doing this wrong. I'm going to fix my own medication. Right? She worked it out so that she could eliminate actually some of the thyroid meds. We are capable of more than others would tell us. I can't promise anybody, I don't know. Some people will have remissions. They go, you know what? I'm done with that crap. And I'm holding this energy of purpose, and I'm going to keep walking that path of what it's like to be healthy and whole. I'm not going to deny health. I'm not going to deny reality, but I'm not going to succumb just to somebody's test result or anything else. So this is part of what we can do. This isn't like come and be healed and fall over. It's like, what are you going to do? How are you going to take control and get the best out of this life that you can? So let's take a break, and then if we have more time, and if there's questions, we can do it. I'll bring this photo back over there, and there's some stuff if you're interested. We have films, we have all sorts of stuff.
He's looking.
If you're still here, please raise your hand. Okay, so we are in the, hopefully, question and answer phase here. And there was something that was just brought up by somebody I want to lead off and address. He said, you're selling spirituality. Well, I want to explain to people that, let's start with Billy Meier in Switzerland, who has the FIGU group, which is a non-profit group. And Meier publishes, he's written himself over 50 books, and all of this information and stuff, it gets published. Some of it in these books, which are very well done. The books cost money to produce. I know that it could be a strange concept. To have a website to put information on costs money. Everything is exchanged. If you're troubled, you have an issue about money, then you can object to anything. It's funny when people object to, quote unquote, you're selling the spiritual teaching, as if it isn't worth anything to exchange with the people who are bringing it forward in the world. Meier writes a book like...
There's a, besides the alternative New Age, there's a mainstream religion that does not sell it.
There's
Think of them.
There's what?
The mainstream religion, Jesus Christ. He does not sell spirituality.
The Catholic Church is one of the richest organizations of the
planet. He said, do not make my Father's house a den of thieves.
Okay, so, right.
I'm sure you've heard of that.
Just a moment. I've heard of a lot of stuff, including that, and there's things in Bibles and holy books and all this stuff. That's great. But you see, if one demands of people who are trying to do a work to bring things into the world, that they have to live by a different standard whereby they can't afford to do their work, because that will make it all spiritual and worthwhile to the person who wants to have that the fruits of their labor, but the person that produces it shouldn't have any medium of exchange. This goes into our misconceptions about what money is. If you worship money, if money is your thing, that's a whole other thing. If you go, well, wait a minute, I happen to live in this material world where I have to pay my rent, my internet bill, I have to buy a computer, put gas in my car, food in my mouth, and what am I doing? Well, I'm going to exchange some service for a means of exchange so that I have a basically neutral thing called money, which isn't my invention. Strangely enough, I didn't invent money. It's a medium of exchange that we use as the intermediary step between getting those things that we want. If my landlord says, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in 1 hour lecture on the Billy Meier case to pay the rent. You will present me with X number of $100, or you have to find another place to live, right? So as a further thing, because we knew that a lot of people would use this false claim, this self-righteous nonsense about money to try to besmirch the whole mission, actually. When I made my contract with Billy Meier, the contract is that I will represent the case for free. They will not pay me, and I will not pay them, so that I can maintain my independence in case I don't agree with something or don't know. I'm not obligated contractually through money or any exchange, actually, to represent something that I can't stand behind with full knowing. Number one, I make films. I've made altogether, as a producer or co-producer, probably 6 films on the Meier case, at my own expense. And nobody's obligated to buy them.
No.
And nobody's obligated to buy Meier's books. As a matter of fact, what we do is on the internet, we have so much free information that if you actually could read it all, you wouldn't need to even complain about somebody making 20 bucks or 5 bucks or anything else, because you would go, I got this all basically for free, even though I have to pay to go online to pay AOL or this one or that one. But these bandits who are providing me with some information that just might liberate and lubricate my thinking, I don't have to pay them. That's fine. We don't care. Read for free.
Selling escapism. It's not just the Billy Meier. It's the whole New Age.
I am not part of the New Age, and we're not part of the New Age. Let me explain something as best I can. We understand that look, the way I got into this was that I was the opening act for a guy who was lecturing on the Meier case. I was doing New Age comedy. I was writing songs. You got affirmations, you practice patience, you visualize and you chant, but down beneath, like a little thief, the belief still says, I can't. So you blame reality, cause duality. He's always got something up its sleeve. Well, the joke's on you, your aura too. You better take your karma and leave. New Age blues, someone dropped a crystal. New Age blues, you better get a metaphysical. New Age blues, I don't want to hear about your energy. Well, while you seek enlightenment, your uptightment's been driving your friends away. In your search for meaning and your cosmic scheme, you've forgotten how to play. There's so much anxiety to your piety. You've been given love a bad name. May I suggest lower consciousness and give us all a break? New Age blues. Hey, babe, you sell a bit still? New Age blues. No wonder you're so miserable. New Age blues. I don't want to hear about your energy. Now, while you're stuck up in all this stuff, let me tell you something. Well, you got some real bad news. You find out that your guru's trying to get in everybody's pants. Well, what do? You're still stuck with you, and that's the name of this dance. If you let love speak, you don't need no technique, because love will always show the way. Stop trying to be happy. You won't feel so crappy, and everything will be okay. New Age blues. Anybody want a network? New Age blues. It sure beats trying to get work. New Age blues. I don't want to hear about your energy. So don't tell me about the New Age, because we're not really part of that. We're part of the real new time, hopefully. But New Age stuff, we all have our issues with a lot of stuff. We offer as much for free as possible. If you can inhale it, digest it, utilize it, we're happy. Okay? As I have to tell you, I can't even do this for free. The what?
The materialism?
Materialism? We're not materialists. We're anti-materialists, if anything, but we live in the material world. And there's nothing the matter with matter. We are all in this 3D deal. But consciousness is not bound by the limits of materialism. So you can, meaning you or anybody else, we can get angry about stuff or resentful or want to call out this or that, or we can go, okay, well that's this is that, but I want this and I have it and I'm free to use it. We just want you to be free to use this.
Yeah, capitalism.
Anyway.
La-di-da.
So, what do you tell people that have an interest in this case and in the teachings? What to do next? How do they find their path to know what to do next?
Okay, a good question. I think most of you heard of it. It's like, people who are interested in this, what do you tell them to do next? Where do they go with it? What do they do? This is the beauty of it. There's enough, and again, freely available, or you can, there's a great book. Meier wrote a great book. It's called The Might of the Thoughts. It's phenomenal. And there's elements of it that are in the spiritual teaching online. Once you are dedicating yourself to your own self-responsibility. Let's just start with that core. It's not about, do you follow Billy Meier? No. What he's saying is, this, you want to become your full, most potentiated self. The elements of self-responsibility, seeing things as they are, taking complete responsibility for your thoughts, and controlling them. This leads you to answer the questions you have, because a lot of the answers arise from within, right? Or you start to notice externally something's popping up that's leading you towards an answer. That, oh, wait a minute, I'm interested in that. So it's not that there's something, oh my gosh, now what do we do? We're lost if we can't read the next book. It's not designed that way. There are people that have grasped a few pages, they grasp an element of this, and they go, wait a minute, that's what I'm going to, and they run with it. We may never see them at a meeting or a presentation, or they may or may not be interested in the Meier case from here, but they grasp because we have within us, we have in our consciousness, in our innermost self, our inner teacher, it's there. This is to help awaken us and to add additional knowledge that we can, through practice, turn into the wisdom of experience. So there's nothing that makes you dependent. There's nothing that you need fear losing, especially since you have such, and I'll say it again, free access to the element. There are different people, including not only Meier, but other people who've studied this, who've written wonderful articles about their own experiences or about their own thinking that contains elements that will grab different people in different ways too. This is about that freedom. It's not about oops, you know, I can't afford the second volume.
Well, I got something to say. That's necessarily not true when it comes to,
When you're finished, he was
you're
pointing
not
over
buying
your head.
information, because when you pass that basket around, and you don't put your money in there, everybody judges you. And then it keeps coming around and coming around.
It can happen in some places, sure. Some places might be a little more generous, I understand you can.
But you're basically buying the same preaching from other people in the sense that they're not asking for a set amount of dollars, if you think about it. Because how would you feel if a basket's coming around, you don't drop no money, next person does, you feel done. Because somebody's judging you like, oh, about this person, it's just goes around like that. And where does all this money go? It has to go to this or wherever else.
Well,
So, I mean, that's what I see.
sure. It's not that I disagree with you. It's part of the problem of the way the world works. But again, we don't always have to partake of the things that we recognize that we're not resonating with. The guy that's standing up here right now has a question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when he went like that and he was pointing at me, but
It's,
you didn't know, I know he's called on you several times.
great.
Anyway, thank you. My focus has been talking to guys like Al Holt. He wrote a paper that's still on the internet about faster than light propulsion technologies, how we might actually do some of this. A very capable man, last I checked, still at the Johnson Space Center. Stan Nightingale's dead, so they can't do anything to him for telling you what he told me. Roswell was covered up to keep the Soviets from preemptively nuking us, with the idea they had to get it over with before we were able to turn nuclear weapons into tinker toys.
Well, let me ask you something before you go on. Do you have a specific question? I know if there's people here that are interested in this, they should have the option to know.
Oh yeah,
5
sure.
minutes left.
We have 5 minutes left. Throw a concise question.
Final thing that I think needs to be put on the table, and it's not really in the forum. One of the first things that came forward in some of the Air Force analysis was E.T. doesn't tell the truth.
Okay, wait.
Billy Meier is a really nice guy, but
okay.
E.T. does not tell the truth all.
First of all,
Nor do we.
each human being is responsible for determining the truth. I can present information, someone else can present it, books are here. It's up to you. We can't say E.T. doesn't tell the truth simply because there are no other ET connections. Our government does not meet with or get information from ETs. There's no evidence for it. It's part of disinformation. And it doesn't matter if we worry about ETs even. There's too many people that are focused in too many ways. Yes, this is about extraterrestrial, but you notice they're not coming down to mingle or anything with us. They've given information that basically says, you are self-responsible human beings. We can give you information on many things. Did you have a question?
Yes. Now look, there's this, I'm sure you're quite aware of the disclosure project by Greer and his company. All right. Generally, their whole messages, they're simply misunderstood. You're simply doing that with this case.
I'm sorry, I missed the question. Please, no, go ahead, state it. So
This Billy Meier thing here, along with the Stephen Greer folks and their disclosure thing, they're simply stating, they're making a clear statement that they're misunderstood. When there's an archive obviously full of another side of these extraterrestrials.
Okay,
And it's
I'm not sure.
not pretty. It is not pretty. It is not lovey-dovey.
Okay, I'm not sure that I fully understand.
It's not peace.
So time is short. There's an assumption, this gentleman is presenting that there's something similar between Stephen Greer's disclosure project and the Meier case and extraterrestrials not being lovey-dovey or whatever. This is, the best way I can answer this is to say, this is assumptions about things that are not in evidence. First of all, Stephen Greer's disclosure project is mainly turned into a disinformation runaround circus of charging people to run out into the desert for $750 to shine the flashlight for aliens on demand. It's idiocy. In any way that we elevate above us, imaginary or real, extraterrestrials, angels, anything else, we are giving away our power. So if we start to have positions and gossip on non-evidence, the best evidence for extraterrestrial life is in the Meier case. I have seen in 36 years no other solid evidence of extraterrestrial manufacture. There's plenty of phenomena, there's plenty of tall tales, there's plenty of disinformation that has come from the CIA and others to keep us away from this one case. Coming back to the title of this, here is the website for those that want it. It's theyfly.com. I might have a couple cards left, or write it down, put it in your cell phones. Again, for those that might have missed it, go online for free. There is a blog, it's called They Fly Blog. You can interact with people from around the world about all of this, the Meier case and other topics. So there are people who come who misunderstand, whose minds have been taken into the imaginary alien realm, pardon me, where they talk about extraterrestrials as was a fact that they have no evidence for, and then they get upset about things. But that's fine. You know, this is what we deal with. This case is the real case, in my opinion, and many people haven't heard about it until now. Why? You heard about all of the Roswell and the imaginary aliens for years. That's meant to keep us chasing our tails, chasing lights in the sky, and being imprisoned in illogical, nonsensical science fiction, disinformation, and intelligence agency BS. This is real now. Our lives are real. The situations coming and already present on Earth are challenging enough that we don't need to get lost in make-believe and disinformation. Find out for yourself. I answer all emails. It just takes me a little while. The blog is very interactive. I monitor it in my sleep practically to approve posts and all that. So please, participate any way you want, or not. But this is for you. Do with it all that you can, okay? Thank you very much for coming. And write those checks out to